Why is Japan so obsessed with cute? People often think it's very modern, tied up with music, anime, cosplay. Actually, it's much, much older. It's a fascinating story, and we're going to get into it in a moment. But first, this is a new channel, so please subscribe to make sure that you don't miss out. Okay, so the story begins 1,000 years ago. Back then, Japan's capital was Kyoto. It was ruled by an emperor and these fantastically sophisticated aristocrats living in these beautiful mansions. These people's lives really set the tone for the next few centuries in Japan. What they wore, what they ate, the poetry they wrote, even the games they played. And we know so much about it because of the writings of two women in particular. In around the year 1000, Murasaki Shikibu wrote The Tale of Genji. It's possibly the world's first novel about a prince called Genji, sophisticated and handsome and has all kinds of romantic adventures. Sei Shonagon, Murasaki's arch-rival, wrote The Pillow Book, sharp, witty, often very unkind reflections on the court and her day. At this point, there was no such thing as Kawaii, but there were two other things going on which fed into the concept that you and I know today. First, Sei Shonagon used to write these little lists, embarrassing things, depressing things. She also wrote a list of adorable things. Here's a flavor. She talks about a baby sparrow that hops towards you when you imitate a mouse's squeak. Pretty white chicks that are still not fully feathered and who look as if their clothes are too short for them. The face of a child drawn on a melon. Second, there was a word that sounds a bit like kawaii, and it's the origin of the word that we use now, kao hayushi. And it means a face that's blushing, but blushing from embarrassment or shame or a sense of what's in front of you being just a little bit pitiable. So there you are, 1,000 years ago, the adorable and the slightly pitiable were coming together, starting to form what we think about as kawaii. All that elegance at the imperial court in Kyoto couldn't last. These aristocrats were having such a fine old time that they didn't really explore what was going on in the countryside. What was happening there was the rise of a warrior class, what you and I would call samurai. And really, after the end of the 12th century, the emperor wasn't in charge of Japan anymore. The warriors had taken over. Those warriors ended up ruling Japan for centuries. Meanwhile, the imperial family became so poor that on at least one occasion, a dead emperor couldn't be buried for weeks because they didn't have the cash for a funeral. These centuries were sometimes very bloody in Japan, but from the early 1600s, so when Shakespeare was writing Hamlet or when the first colonies that went on to become the United States were being formed, Japan entered a period of 250 years of peace. I'm always amazed by how many things we think are modern about Japan actually go back to the Edo period. Department stores, Edo period. Recycling and cleanliness, Edo period. People used to literally fight each other for the right to take away the night soil from samurai homes. They thought that superior samurai diets would mean that the quality of their fertilizer was better. Celebrities, Edo period. Healthy fast food, Edo period. Kawaii culture, Edo period. Just look at the way that artists like Maruyama Okyo were starting to draw puppies, or the design of these little cord fasteners called netsuke. There's an interesting theme here, I think, and it's the third ingredient of kawaii. Whenever Japan passes through a strict, disciplined, even authoritarian period in its history, a deep sense of playfulness seems to break out. In the Edo period, there were limits on the kinds of clothes you could wear, the sorts of jobs you could do, even where you could travel. And it's here that we find art and objects like netsuke becoming a kind of playful protest. That's true, I think, for the first part of the 20th century, where you find cartoon characters like Punumi-chan, and then of course from the 1970s, which is when Kawaii culture, as you and I know it, really begins to take off. Barely a decade after the end of World War II, Japan entered this period of incredible economic growth that took it really from being a place of ashes and ruined cities to being one of the biggest economies in the world, and undoubtedly the most modern. How did it do it? Well, of course, through huge amounts of hard graft, but of the kind, I think, that put people under a lot of pressure to do the right thing, to conform, to play their allotted part. And in response, what do you get? An outburst of playfulness. Hello Kitty goes back to the 1970s. Japanese high school girls in the 1970s started to draw their letters in this kind of curvy, cute handwriting, sometimes putting little pictures of rabbits and other animals alongside it. Then, of course, you have the manga and anime of legendary figures like Tezuka Osamu, who was influenced by Disney and those large saucer eyes of Betty Boop. But then something surprising happened. The authorities in Japan caught on. Cuteness, they realized, is a way of softening the blow when you're asking people to do something.
And that's one of the reasons why mascots in Japan have become such an important part of life.
Whether you're a government, or a bank, or a building site. So if you go to Japan now, of course you'll see Kawaii in department stores, in toy shops. You'll see it in restaurants, cafes, on the streets of famous neighborhoods like Harajuku in Tokyo. But medical clinics use Kawaii too, so do the police. Even Japan's self-defense forces, still now a controversial organization in Japan, came up with their own cute mascot, Prince Pickles, to try and make the Japanese people fall in love with them. Scientists, meanwhile, have unlocked the why of cute, telling us really what Seishonagon knew 1,000 years ago, that it's all about triggering our need to nurture. Think how many cute characters in Japan have those large heads, those big eyes, those soft baby-like curves, even a high-pitched voice. Our need to nurture, it turns out, can be big business. The character licensing industry in Japan is worth nearly $10 billion every year. So that is the story of cute. Adorable plus pitiable plus play equals kawaii. If you found this useful, please take a moment to like and subscribe.